Hello and welcome to another great episode of the Gonzo Experience. I am David Gonzo Mamano here every Wednesday morning for over 6 years now, folks. And it's been so long that I actually have to repeat guests now. I've run through all my favorites and I have to repeat some of them now. So, and one of those favorites from many years ago is Lou Diamond. Lou, welcome to the Gonzo Experience.
I'm excited to be here. I'm glad you've run out of people.
I'm like, Lou, I need you again. Right? It's like I finished the internet. Let's go back to page one, right? So,
right.
Well, Lou, met you in New York City many years ago at a networking event, and we have been. I don't think, we met face to face that time, but I don't think we met since then. But I feel like, as they say, brothers from another mother, and watching your success, and you've got a great company, you've got a great brand. And you're doing some incredible things about helping people to connect authentically for better everything, right? Better leadership, better marketing, better sales, better engagement. I mean, like, what else is what is connecting not good for, right? So, so a little bullet point of your bio here. You've been doing this for a long time, Lou Diamond. You're a keynote speaker. You're a master connector. You are a consultant. You're a coach. You're a best-selling author. You're a podcast and TV host. You are CEO of Thrive. You've written 2 books. Your first book, 4 or 5 years ago, Master the Arts of Connecting.
6 years ago now.
Is it
How about that?
Ago already? Yeah. I have that book and I read it time goes.
You're the one. You're the one. No.
I'm the one that bought it on Amazon. It was so good. I bought it twice. Yeah. Master the Art of Connection. It's still on Amazon. I checked this morning.
It is.
And your new book, which we're going to talk about, is called Speak Easy. And if you're watching this, Lou is holding it up now. It's very.
I'd be really good on The Price is Right? I was going
to say you're more like a Vanna. You're more like a Vanna White.
Vanna, like, do. Here are the letters.
Yeah. Great cover, great brand. Lou definitely has a great brand. He uses this great shade of green everywhere that just makes me happy for some reason. So, Lou, again, welcome back. For those of you that weren't listening to our interview, 4 years ago or whenever it was, tell us a little bit about your journey, who you are, and how you got to be where you are today, helping people. And then I want to talk about, how you do help people, and especially cover the new book.
Yeah. No. So, and thank you for having me back on. It's always fun. And back in the day, whenever I was on the show, I can't believe it's 4 years ago. A lot of the messages and the things that I've done have kind of formulated into the work that I'm doing today. And it's not any different from helping people thrive through connecting. That's usually what I love to tell people, is that I work with the most amazing businesses, leaders, and brands and help them thrive through the power of connecting. And you so aptly mentioned, I help salespeople better connect to their customers and targets. I help marketers better connect their message to their audience, and I help leaders better connect to their people. Because when we understand what we need to do to better connect and where we can improve those particular skills, we do thrive. And that's where the whole company and the message is about. And interestingly, along this journey, like yourself, I too have recognized one very important lesson about connection. And David, that's where I learned where every connection in our lives begins. I learned the starting point, if it would. And fittingly, here we are right now. A starting point in this particular instance of every connection that we have in our lives begins with a really good conversation. This is the epicenter. You have a good conversation, it will lead to the beginning of a connection and opening up trust and a whole bunch of things. And it starts at a conversation. But you and I know this, whether in business or in life or personal, whatever it is, not every conversation we have is a good one. Not every conversation leads to a connection. In your sales meetings, your sales pitch doesn't land the business. Your job interview doesn't get you the job hired that you're looking for. The first date doesn't turn into a second one, right? So there's something about the conversation that isn't quite connecting in all cylinders. And I stopped and I said, from a lot of the lessons that you and I both had the opportunity to do, me hosting a podcast show called Thrive Loud, which is now on 800 some odd episodes, and having connected with some of the most amazing, thriving individuals on this planet, I've learned a bunch of lessons from there, and I've learned a lot of lessons from consulting. And I thought about something really interesting. What if every conversation you had led to a great connection? What if every single connection you had was great? What if the work that you did before, during, and after a conversation helped to grow a great relationship and connection? What if you knew the keys and tips that will empower you to connect, engage, and win in every conversation you have? It doesn't matter. It could be with one person you meet just fleetingly in an elevator, to a relationship with a client or a prospect that you've been trying to do business with, or maybe an employee or a company, and helping to create a connected culture. And that is where the epicenter of where Speakeasy jumped in. And the whole idea was that I was going to give the playbook to everyone so they can learn the keys of how to have better conversations. And here's the funny part. At the beginning of all of it, I tried to figure out, well, what is it? Is it something we say? Is it something we do? Is it a way that we need to formulate our message? Tell me what it is. David, I learned something unbelievable along this journey. And probably from the last time I was on your show, it has highlighted and really made me double click down on this and show people how to do it. And then again, it's not what you need to say. It's not what you need to do. It's how you need to be. And if you understand the ways that you need to be ahead of every conversation and how to do that, you will increase the likelihood that people will want to have more conversations with you.
That's fantastic. So I'm gonna throw you a challenge off the bat, right? So sometimes in life, we have to connect with somebody that maybe we don't like, or they don't like us, but we have to. Let's say it's for work. So how do two people that maybe they see the world differently, or just don't like each other for one reason or another, how would you suggest that they could connect to create the results desired?
Well, let's double click down onto why they don't like each other, right? So a lot of times why we don't like each other is probably, by the way, because we didn't have a conversation to learn to connect with one other individual. Now, I'll make it clear there are some people that, don't fit into our worlds. And that's when I did Master the Art of Connecting, I kind of used this bubble analogy that basically showed your world and the person you're trying to connect to world, and how you can bring those worlds together and where they overlap, and make it clear that you're right. There isn't always a natural fit in a connection. However, I truly believe that every single person on this planet that you have a conversation with, whether you like them or not, that conversation is a gift. It's a gift to you. It's a gift to the person that you're speaking with. When you have a good conversation or an uncomfortable conversation, what you recognize is the assets of what somebody has in their world and where you can help one another. And one of the things that I help to understand is a lot of times the reason that people do not connect or do not like each other, they're very similar, by the way. Likability and connectability kind of go hand in hand. But part of the reason is that when you don't connect, you're not exchanging the currency of connection. David, the currency of connection in our lives is a 4-letter word. It's a good word, not a bad 4-letter word. Help. Are you helping someone? Are you helping their world when you are having a conversation with them? Is the conversation you're having with them going to help them in some capacity? Is it going to make them smarter? Is it going to give them a service or an offering that will help them? Is it going to learn knowledge from you that they can take in and then utilize? Are they going to learn something from something the way that you're doing something that can help their own business or help them in their lives? So a lot of times when people aren't connecting or not liking each other is that they're not recognizing the overlapping point on where they could help each other for whatever that might be. You're right. They may not become best friends or integrated parts because they're polar opposites, or more notably, this is something going on in our country very actively, is that we're very divided and very polar onto other things. And what's happening is that we're not having the conversations that will bring us together so we can appreciate how each other helps one another and where people are coming from. You find it anytime, this, when you have a good conversation with somebody, you actually feel good. You feel like you've been lifted up. It actually energizes you. And scientifically, they've studied this. Great conversations can lift endorphins. Heck, there've been people who have been having phone sex or phone relationships from a distance. They're not seeing each other, and the conversation alone is exciting them. So make it clear that great conversations can lead to really great things. In that example, it could lead to really great things. But I utilize this when you don't like one another, David. I think it's important that what has happened is you haven't had the opportunity to truly step into a conversation, empathize in that particular moment, and really connect with that other individual. You're holding on too much to yourself, your own beliefs, your own things, and not being open enough to want to bring that person in. So that's some of the things they're being. Actually, there's probably a way that they're being that is not why they're liking each other. And for the record, there's plenty of people in our lives that we don't like or don't agree with. But I think we can get to a point where we at least understand and respect them. And that will actually be a common connection that can help you down the road.
Super, super. I'm a child, probably like you to some extent. I'm a child of the 70s and 80s, and I go back to Reagan, who, the first example is, he would have lunch with Tip O'Neill, different parties, but they would come together.
As I understand it, with Tip O'Neill, it was usually a liquid lunch. I just want to make that clear.
Well, there was a lot of liquid, a little food, yeah, and that helped. That helped the connections, right? But they would sit down.
We would do. Can we bring him back? Can we go to heaven and bring that dude back?
Poor Tip and Ron, they're no longer here. But
yes,
I respect the fact that they came from different sides of the political party aisles, but they were able to come together and say, all right, what do we have in common? How could we move forward, right? And then I think he took that lesson and brought it to Gorbachev with Russia, and who was our arch enemy, and by the end of his term, they're laughing and they're good friends, right? And the wall came down, et cetera. So that I think that is like good connecting on steroids, right?
Well, I think in all disagreements that we have and arguments, what usually is happening is that people are not embracing a lot of the great qualities that I talk about in Speakeasy on the ways that you need to be. There's certain ways in there. And by the way, one of the ways, and I'm just going to use this one, in a high level themes of where the book and my message, and usually what I speak more about, is the most important way that you cannot start any conversation without, and that is you need to be grateful that you're even having a conversation and that you're appreciative that somebody's there. David, you and I are busy people. We're solopreneurs, entrepreneurs. We do lots of things and we have busy schedules. And here we are allocating time to provide your listeners with some value, me to tell my story here. I'm appreciative of you to give me the platform. You're appreciative of me because you've run out of guests. No, I'm appreciative of me from the sense that we can have a great conversation and it can educate a lot of the things that goes on in your program. So make it clear we are both taking time, a very limited resource, to speak with one another. There are billions of people on the planet, and you would think that with that, we could have a conversation with anybody. But life, our schedules, our geographies, our logistics, our politics, our things, whatever it might be, sometimes keep us apart. And because of that, we really do have to appreciate any chance we do to have a conversation. Trust me, I think a lot of people, I was laughing about this. I don't know if you saw this. It was recently on 60 Minutes. And I don't usually like to go political, David, but this was something you couldn't miss. The president of France and Putin met a few weeks ago or a few months ago, and they were having a conversation about all the stuff going on in the Ukraine. And they were at a table that, I kid you not, was probably like 30 feet apart from each other. It was like the ultimate long table. And it's hard to connect, let alone have a conversation with two people that speak a different language from that distance, from that thing. It's like the energy can't even be there. So there was no intent to really want to connect, right? Because people are being selfish or in their own ways. And I do agree, though, that if you think about it, it is the conversations that we have in our lives that solve a lot of the problems. One of the things we do in Speakeasy, we have a special bar cart menu in the book. And these are special, we'll call them conversational flights, that you can engage in that are the most common conversations that we all deal with, and what you need to bring to the table. What are the ingredients? Almost like a recipe, David. And my favorite one is the 800-pound gorilla. That's what we call it on the bar menu, but that's the uncomfortable conversation. We've all had them. You have to talk about your boss, about maybe getting a raise. You have to have a difficult conversation maybe with a client because they're not happy, or the client's not happy with you and they've got a problem. You've got personal situations where you've done something wrong that's upset a friend of yours, right? And maybe there's tension, or family members who you're not speaking with. Bringing this back to gratitude, I think I've learned a lot of lessons in my life. And unfortunately, David, I learned something the hard way. I had a little dispute with someone where I didn't see eye to eye, and I was very stuck on my own morals of this. And I was not speaking to a certain individual. And today, I can't speak to that individual because he's no longer with us.
Mhm.
And it breaks my heart because how selfish was I that I wasn't willing to upgive and have a chance to have another gift of a conversation, what I would do to get that back. And I think a lot of that has helped shape the way that I help people understand and appreciate how important understanding how to have good conversations is. And when you start at that root of that, the problems you'll solve along the way, addressing the uncomfortable conversation right away. One of the ingredients to that particular drink is what we call a 4-cup chaser of deal with it. So often we just got to, have to deal with the problem. There's a financial issue, or there's a money issue, or someone's doing something wrong in the company, or someone you're working with, you're not happy with their performance, and you're kind of walking on eggshells to talk about it. No, have the conversation about where the thing is right away. And by the way, you'll start to understand maybe where there's a miscommunication, and you'll increase the likelihood that you'll not only get that person to start performing better or fix the problem, but you'll also recognize how to avoid it in the future. So many of the problems that we have are because we're not having great conversations when we should be, David.
That is so fantastic, and great story about how that person is not here anymore. You have regret, and it's such a great reminder that the only way around it is through it. And sometimes you just have to say, I have to take a deep breath and deal with this situation. And a lot of times it's just having a difficult conversation. But if you have that difficult conversation, I would think that what happens after that is a better connection usually, right? Respect, connection.
Not only is, you're so on the point, because what happens is you've cluttered up where the problem was. You've dealt with whatever that matter is. And for an unbelievable amount of us, we respect people that want to address a problem quickly. We look at that characteristic of somebody and say, heck, you're right. We did need to deal with this problem. This was a big elephant in the room, and I felt uncomfortable talking about it. And once you get it out of the way, think of how much smoother and more easygoing and how much more closer you are with the people that you've had that conversation with. And there's two things that happens from this. One, you want to have more conversations with them. And two, using that currency of help, you're going to now understand better how to avoid whatever the uncomfortable situation is so that you can help one another and both take the best of that conversation and grow, learn, thrive, and move onward and upward. That's what's great about making sure you address that conversational flight as quickly as you can, the uncomfortable one.
I love that you put alcohol themes into the book.
Yeah, well, it is a speakeasy. And remember, I do like speakeasy. There is a little occasional bartender that pops in and kind of explains the vibe, the juice with all of this stuff. And it, by the way, it was a lot of fun. And what was actually really cool in coming up with some of those conversational flights it's almost funny how when you're an author and you write stuff, I have a methodology on how I communicate a lot of the things. But in this particular instance, the funny part about Speakeasy, which is about conversations and how we can connect with every one of them, that wasn't what initially I set out to write. It turned out, and being on the other end of podcasting, I'm sure you've learned this, we have the best gift of the world. And that is we get to sit on the other side of the microphone and listen to some of the most brilliant, thriving, incredible, amazing people that are doing incredible things in this world. And it's like you're learning from them little bits and nuggets every single day. And we're front and center and getting all of that. And what I realized was, well, there must be something into listening that is really important, because when we do listen effectively, which is part of having great conversations, by the way, there's a listening aspect. It isn't so much about speaking. It's about making sure we maybe listen a little more than we should. So I looked into listening, and I even went to the Pacific Northwest to a company that makes hearing aids to understand exactly how they're processing hearing so that people can listen better. Interesting concept on a play on the words. But when you think about all the technical components of what happens with sound and emotion and tone and all of those things, and trying to translate that into people who can't hear, well, this is fascinating. And there were two things I learned. One, it was a heck of a lot more, and it was a totally different book. And two, I was not the right person to write this. So I stepped away and said, well, where is the power? And the reality is, and the power was in understanding the thing that I love to do most, which is have great conversations with people and recognize that yes, listening is important, but understanding what to say when you need to say it and how you need to be in a conversation is the art form that I want people to take with them so they can apply it personally, professionally, even when they're having conversations with themselves, the honest, more difficult conversations on trying to recognize how we can connect to our hearts, to our souls, to our minds, and all of that.
Yeah, that's super fantastic. You know, you reminded me a time when I was in college, and I was I was a communication major, and I forgot the class, maybe like communication theory or something. But the professor brought in this speaker from Israel who had just written a book about communication and connecting with other people. And this is a long time ago. Can't remember her name or the book, but what I do remember, she says something so cool is that when and a lot of times, you know, so what you're talking about, that when you are trying to have a conversation with somebody and a lot of times solve a problem with somebody, you have to find out where your circles overlap as a starting point. You know, what do we have in, like, you know, when you and I met, I forgot what we talked about, but I bet we talked about the fact that I'm from upstate New York, you're from downstate. Oh, you went to Cornell, which is kind of upstate. For you, it's downstate for me. But and then we probably just led the conversation from there. I probably said a joke like, I can't believe that, you know, Cornell let you in, and then we started laughing and had another drink.
This sounds accurate, by the way. Listeners need to know that probably was what happened, and I still ask that question to this day.
Yeah. And here we are, all these years later, we still like each other. But and we weren't even trying to solve a problem. We were just trying to get to know each other. She was coming from a place of, you know, business, politics, trying to come together to solve issues. And she came up with something very interesting. And she was from Israel, so she was at liberty to really dive into this. But she said, and so you have to, you have to wonder why Israel and Palestine, why we can't come to the table to get along. And our circles don't overlap. She said that our circles don't overlap. She goes, some people may say they only overlap in that we both want each country, the other country, like gone, right? And so it's not a great starting point to have a conversation, right? And so I thought I just, you know, it made me remember that all these years later, and I think it just kind of naturally happens if you want to move forward with a friendship or with just doing something productive, solving a problem, etc. So I think you're onto something, Lou.
Well, thank you. And I also agree, because I've also seen results from it. One of the things that the book highlights a lot are certain stories of certain situations on how important a conversation is in a certain realm of that light. And one of my favorite understandings is, like, you sometimes need to understand what you need to apply into that conversation, what needs to be given. And this goes way back. I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's 22 years ago. Sting was on tour for the Brand New Day album, which had just come out. And the company I was working for was an internet technology company. And we were responsible for the online website that was sponsored by Compaq Computer. Go figure, right? Yeah. They were a client of mine for some years. And actually, it was really cool. I got to meet Sting and all that stuff. And one of the cool things was we got to go on tour and we got to watch rehearsals. And we went to this venue in Texas, you know, big indoor arena in San Antonio where he had performed, where the Spurs play. And I was at the most amazing space in the entire world. And that is, if you've ever been to a soundboard at a really big concert in a venue like that, it is the coolest thing in the world. It's about 3/4 of the way back from the main stage. And I used to think that it was all about how the rehearsal for the artists on the stage so that they can practice the songs and the routines and what would be. But the real thing is that every single venue, wherever you go to, the sound is different. And the key is to understand how the music resonates in that particular environment. Well, think about conversations and how important that is, right? How you bring the right resonance into a certain conversation that you have. And the analogy here flows through that it is so important to know your audience, to know the conversation that you want to have with someone and the environment that you're in, to address which conversation is going to have a greater likelihood that you're going to connect with them and how you need to approach it. You know, what decibel level do you need to be at? What tone do you need to be at? And the energy you need to provide. So all of these things are real important, which we don't always think about in a conversation. You and I have thought about it, and we don't even know we're doing it when an episode is over. If you've ever had to edit a podcast episode or send it to a producer, you got to level up the sounds. I may be louder than you. And we want to create an environment that's, the conversation is almost like a great cocktail, a great drink. It tastes good. It feels good. It sounds good all together. That not only the people who are speaking are connecting, but the people who are even flies on the wall, like your listeners, are connecting as well. creating that type of environment takes a lot of practice and skill. And that's what we try to talk about in Speakeasy, on the ways that you can do that more often.
That's great. I love that you found such a great niche and you're so focused on it and you're using it to help people and companies. I mean, large part of your business, right, is you'll go into companies as a coach, as a consultant, and help bring their communication and connections to the next level.
Yeah. I mean, let's just use it as a sales story, and I'll bring it from sales, marketing, and leadership, and the three things that I focus on. You've seen the story when you have a sales deck that a certain company is presenting themselves, and David, all they can do is talk about themselves. Where in theory, what we've learned is talking about you means absolutely nothing. The only person that matters is actually the person you're speaking with. One of my favorite lessons is, you've seen this before in a sales pitch, if you've ever been at any professional services level. A lot of times companies like to, flex and show, hey, we're really cool, we're really great. Here's all the companies that we've worked for before, right? And there's a huge bunch of logos thrown up on the slide, all these corporate logos that were all recognizable. And I always said, this is the worst slide in the world. And many people will lead with this slide, not in a sense of, just being able to just, bring it out when asked upon. No, they would start with the slide. Here are all the people that we've worked with in the past. Well, that slide actually has a counterintuitive message. It basically shows every single one that's up on the wall, except the person that's in the room. Mm-hmm. So here's everybody that we're working with that isn't you. And I used to laugh about this because this is really good information, because people like to know who you've worked with. But guess what? Today, there's this thing called the internet, and you can go search for things and find out who they're working with and see case studies. Or more notably, they can ask you, can you share with me? Or can I share with you who we've worked with? You can ask them. And there's a big difference in your conversations versus telling someone what to do and asking. And when you come from a place of asking and listening versus talking and telling, you're going to be a more effective salesperson. And by the way, that translates over to your marketing messages, asking your customers or the messaging of your company, what are the type of people you want to work with? Or as a leader, asking the people that work in your organization, what are their needs and priorities and problems and where they need to focus on, versus telling people what to do and being the boss. None of that ever resonates. That becomes deaf after a while. I used to tell my kids all the time, David, put the toilet seat down when you're finished, or clean your room, right? After a while, you'd say this time and time and time again, and it would just be, they'd fall on deaf ears. But if you spun this a little bit, and like when my parents would be coming over to the house, grandparents of my children, I'd say to them, hey, your grandparents are coming over. What do you think your grandmother would say if she saw your room like this? Well, I think they'd look around and they go, I don't know. I think she'd be pretty embarrassed by this. Well, you think it would be a good idea to clean it? Mm-hmm. Sometimes that's an effective way if you want parenting lessons on how to actually get someone to ask them a question versus telling them what to do. It is in this that are the ways that we can use conversations powerfully to get our message across.
Yep. Asking rather than telling. And, probably what's going through your kids when you ask them that question in their minds is that grandma's going to be upset with me. Grandma's going to think I'm a slob. I better fix my area up. It became their own decision.
You would think that was the case. That worked very effectively with my daughter. It did not always work with my son, because his definition of what he thought was clean versus what actually would be were totally different. But, that was a long time ago.
How old is your son now?
Well, I've got two kids in their 20s now, 22 and 20, respectively. My son is working in New York City, and my daughter is a junior up at Cornell.
At Cornell? Beautiful. Well, so I read one time, and I believe it to be true, that boys don't fully mature. Their brain doesn't fully, connect until they're about 27.
Oh, man, I thought it was like 52. Because I thought I was going to get there this year. I really did.
Almost there. You're almost there. I'm 54 this year, and I could see the finish line. Yes.
Well, you still have hair on top of your head, so it's all looking good. So.
Well, it's
Oh, stop complaining, listeners who are watching this. You need to go watch the video.
It's too curly. No,
it's not too curly. Come on.
I actually sleep with 1,000 pencils in my hair every night, but just to get this look, so.
Nice.
Very good. Well, Lou Diamond, another great interview. Let's do it again in 4 years when your next book comes out. Super fantastic.
I think this is it. We're just going to keep using this one. We'll just come up with milestone anniversary versions of this. Maybe there'll be special appendix.
What is your next book? Rehab? I mean, go along with the drinking theme. So
Yeah, we'll call it something like, connecting at the clinic or something, something of
there's
that
something
nature.
there. There's something there. But Lou, if people want to reach out, learn more, connect with you, what are the best ways?
So the best way, first of all, you can go to speakeasybook.com and you can get yourself a copy of Speak Easy. It's available on all platforms, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, wherever we sell your books. We have links to get it there. And you can also go to my business site, which is Thrive Loud. That's THRIVE LOUD.com. And at Thrive Loud, you can find all the stuff where I work with companies, the speaking work, the consulting work, and you have access to the Thrive Loud podcast, which David Mamano has been a guest on. And along with, 800 other some odd people, I forgot we're up to. It's actually kind of crazy. We're ending I don't know when this episode's coming up, the end of 2022. The Thrive Loud count, I think, is at 850 episodes, which means that it's sometime in the next year, or maybe it's in 2024, we're going to hit 1,000, which is kind of crazy.
Gotta have a party. Gotta have a party.
I don't think we're going to have a party. I have to live that long to get to that point. But I think what I really want to do is have a party at 999. I want to know who ends up being that episode. Maybe we'll bring David in for that one. We'll have
Come on, let's do it.
episode.
Let's do it.
Truly a pleasure to connect with you here today.
Great. And if anybody ever wants a personal connection to Lou, and I just got that loud, Lou actually is in the word loud. That's pretty cool. I like it.
There's a good story of it. My son, that was my handle on Twitter. The company was Thrive and my name's Lou D, and I just put Thrive Lou D. And and when we came up with a name for the podcast, this is the podcast basically at that point, I said to him, we need a good name. What should it be about? And he goes, I don't understand. You already have the name. And he says, it's Thrive Loud. And like all the bells went off. We're like, oh my God, because we'd been looking at it differently. We even switched the company Thrive over to thriveloud.com, and everything, as you could see, well-branded, became Thrive Loud from that.
Blown up. I love it. No, that's great. What a great story on how your brand came to be. But, Gonzo family, if you do want a personal connection to Lou D, throw me an email, david@davidmamano.com. I'd be happy to give you a connection. He's a great guy. He's very friendly, personal. I refer a lot of people to him, podcast guests. He always makes me very happy that I have made referrals, because the people are always excited to work with him.
You gave me a good one recently. You gave me that we were just talking about her before we were on the air, Jen Zawadsky. She was a spectacular guest from Future You Project.
Appreciate you. Gen Z was super. Natalia Berdikian, I think.
She was amazing. Natalia was awesome. Loved her.
Another great one as well. So excellent. But Lou, thanks again. Appreciate you and sharing some heartbeats with us today. And I wish you continued massive success.
Right back at you, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Gonzo family, for being with us today. I know there's thousands and thousands, maybe millions now of podcasts out there. I appreciate you listening and or watching to the Gonzo Experience. Make sure to have a great day, everybody, and stay awesome.